busiest stage of the 2026 Motor FIM Superbike World Championship season reaches its conclusion, with the 15th race in that spell taking us to the end of the 5th round in just 9 weeks. We'll be back in Italy in September, but in the meanwhile, this is the climax of the Pirelli Emilia-Romagna round. The Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli is one of WorldSBK's 4 classic venues. Inaugurated in 1972 and on the calendar since 1991, it's under contract to host the series until 2031. 4.226 kilometres long, but a compact layout with 11 braking zones among the 16 corners. Nonetheless, only 3 of them are considered demanding, and just 27 seconds are spent on the brakes here. The start-finish straight might only measure 510 metres, but almost 200 of that is the braking zone into turn 1, a major incident hotspot. There were 29 crashes here last season, the most of any corner at any circuit. And if riders get in deep, there's also an opportunity to pass on the switchback into turn 2. The longest time spent on the brakes is into turn 8, La Quercia, 4.6 seconds to scrub off over 200 kilometres per hour. This is where Nicolo Bulliger passed Iker Lecuona to win race 1 yesterday. The fastest overtaking hotspot is turn 11, sliding almost full throttle in 5th gear into the eye-watering Curvone, where Bulliger made his moves last year. He set a new race lap record this morning, some 0.7 of a second faster than the previous best, set in the corresponding race 2 years ago. Nicolo Bulliger has now reached 40 career wins and done so in just over 2.5 seasons, 20 of them in 2026. He's now chasing the single-season winning record held by Alvaro Bautista with his 27 victories in 2023 and has the chance to match top-ranked Razgatlioglu's 21 from last year this afternoon. Bulliger so dominant in race 1 yesterday, a 6-second margin, his biggest since Phillip Island. He was only 1.1 seconds ahead in the Superpole race, but still had 1.5 of a second per lap when he needed to call on it to break clear. Steve English alongside me, Bulliger with 23 consecutive victories and counting, and such has been his margin over the rest of the field, here in Misano in particular, that anything apart from another win for him here would be a major surprise.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of riders that have been in relatively similar positions to Bulliger, where you've got that expectation and the pressure to keep delivering results, keep delivering race wins. And the one thing that is constantly said is that ability to withstand pressure and then deflect it away from you becomes the most important thing. You look back over the years, whether it's in World Superbikes, MotoGP, domestic Superbike championships, you need to continuously deliver and not allow your rivals to have an opportunity. That's what Bulliger keeps doing, and he did it this morning.
Yeah, a straightforward Siso Superpole race in the end, in which the lead never changed hands. We had the same top 3 over the line on every lap. And more action behind for 4th. Alex Lowe's looked set for the spot until a mechanical retirement. From there, Alberto Sura provided much of the entertainment in his battle with Axel Bassani, but ultimately lost 4th place when he ran wide and was unfortunate to be given a penalty for rejoining in front of Miguel Oliveira. Lost another 2 spots post-race as a result. So 2 4th places this weekend so far for Axel Bassani. Lorenzo Baldassari inheriting 5th for his first point since race 1 in Aragon, and Sura only scoring 7th.
Yeah, and for Sura, obviously that 7th starting position as well on the 3rd row is going to be himself, Locatelli, McKenzie. It becomes important for him to be able to make a fast start and make quick progress into those top 5 positions. He'll still think that there's an outside chance of being able to fight for a podium position here at home.
Yeah, it does depend perhaps on a little bit of scrapping up ahead of him, particularly without that advantage of track position. And over the longer race, we know that does tend to be his weakness. The Siso Superpole race is where he's had the best of his results at the last 3 rounds. In we go then to find Nicolo Bulliger, your World Championship leader, so far unbeaten, of course, in 2026. And heading towards the completion of his 7th consecutive hat-trick at the start of this season. Really is almost, well, no, it's not almost unprecedented, it is unprecedented in WorldSBK.
Exactly, and one of the riders I've spoken to in the past about championship seasons like this, his BSB championship was a lot like this, where almost it was a surprise if anyone was able to challenge him, and that's been the same case for Bulliger. And the one thing is just being able to keep that determination. Every morning you wake up to go training, every day that you're working with the team to try and find that next step again, and You see for Igor Lakona, their teammate to Bulaga, just gives him the fist pump. He knows how good of a job he's doing on his bike, and on the other side of the pit box there's someone else just doing a better job than him, and Bulaga doesn't want to give up any opportunities to keep winning.
Yeah, Lakona was a frustrated figure, wasn't he, yesterday? Saw that winning margin quite significant, much bigger than it's been at any of the previous European rounds. He looked more content with second place, as happy as you can be with the second place earlier on today.
Yeah, he suffered a little bit with the clutch in race in the Superpole race and cost him a little bit of speed, but ultimately second down on his teammate. It wasn't a bad performance this morning for Lakona. Yesterday we saw off the line he was really strong, led for half a lap before Bulaga came through. That's the challenge for Lakona, is that you can have these moments where you're able to give yourself chances, but you just need to be inch perfect against Bulaga. And around this track, I'd say I think we've got quite a few miles under his belt.
Yeah, so all that Lakona can do is keep picking up those second places, drag out the championship fight for as long as mathematically possible, knowing that it might well be on our next visit to Italy that Nicolo Bulaga has his first championship point. On then to Jari Montella, originally qualified in 4th position this weekend. He's now up to 3rd on the grid for race 2 this afternoon. It has been 2 third places for him this weekend so far. Remember, just 2 rounds ago in Mox, he was 3rd in all 3 races. Also had a couple of podium finishes at the Hungarian round immediately prior to that. So Aragon proving a bit of a blip rather than anything else. Montella back up to 3rd in the World Championship standings, and with Alex Lowes and Sam Lowes both suffering retirements in the Superpole race earlier on today, Montella beginning to build a buffer again. Yeah,
and Yari's had that consistency all the way through this season of being able to grind out results. Only a couple of times this year where he hasn't really been at the races. Aragon obviously the biggest example, but he's bounced straight back from it this weekend and come away with 2 podiums.
Alex Lowes, confirmation of his participation with Bimota next season along with Axel Bassani, and they have delivered a good home weekend for Bimota. Alex would likely have come away with that 4th position had it not been for the mechanical retirement. He built a good buffer over teammate Axel Bassani in his scrap with Alberto Sura behind, before Lowes suddenly slowed in the path of the oncoming riders and unfortunately was forced to retire from the race. So he'll be starting down on the 4th row of the grid, so that lot of points also complicates his afternoon now.
Yeah, didn't hear yet what the issue was in that first race today, and Lowes obviously had to park the bike up and lose out on that opportunity of being able to pick up another top 5 minute. Yesterday was a good performance by him, front row start, and then able to come away with 5th place finish. So the Bimota's been there or thereabouts where it needs to be so far this weekend. Lowes is going to need to make a really fast start.
Yeah, it's been in amongst the independent Ducatis, and that really is all we've been asking for Bimota this season. Last couple of rounds, Alex hasn't qualified so well. One round a little sluggish and the other with some problems. So here he's qualified well. He's been up at the front. Bassani's done well to get himself onto the 2nd row of the grid as well. Meanwhile, this is what happened for Sam Lowes in the Superpole race earlier on today. Again, he'll be coming back from the 4th row of the grid in race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, turn 4 and 5 have caught him out in both races so far, and unfortunate there for Sam in this race, but another costly mistake, and for the Mark VDS team, they need results now in this race, but it's been a tougher weekend, probably one of the tougher ones that they've had so far this year.
He's going to know, of course, Donington Park to come, Magny-Cours to come. The opportunities will be there, but he's got to stem the bleeding this weekend because he hasn't scored, and as a result of a race 1 crash as well, while Jari Montella has had those 2 third places, so he doesn't want to leave himself with too much work to do. Axel Bassani now 14 points away from Sam Lowes. He's up to 6th in the World Championship standings. Got ahead of Lorenzo Baldassari yesterday when Baldassari failed to score. Bassani with an excellent race 1, stalking and passing his teammate to come through for 4th place.
Bassani's just ridden really well here this weekend, and that's the Bassani that we need to see all the way through, because consistency is the one problem that you have with Axel, and when you look at what he's capable of, that's why you get a factory seat, but you need to make sure that you're able to deliver those performances week on weekend.
Yep, on the podium in Phillip Island, top 8 throughout the weekend in Aragon last time out, and the 2 4th places this weekend thus far in Misano, certainly his best performances of the campaign as pit lane opens with 21 laps to go. Here's a reminder of the news announced earlier on this weekend that Brembo will be exclusive braking system suppliers for WorldSBK from next season onwards. Of course, they're already supplying all but one of the teams on the grid in 2026, but a new braking system entirely coming in next season.
Yeah, and obviously whenever you bring in the carbon ceramic discs for next year, you want to have it where everyone's able to use that, and ultimately to have them in as a partner for the championship takes away one element for teams and manufacturers to think about as well, where you don't have to look and see, are we giving up a little bit something in this area to another, so that should help a little bit as well, just with competitiveness in the class.
So riders making their way out onto circuit. Miguel Oliveira, highest grid position that he has had this weekend so far. He starts from 6th, and when he has qualified well earlier on in the season, he's been able to run at the front and challenge for podiums. Last time a non-Ducati rider was on the podium was race 1 at the Hungarian round. Also had 3 rostrum finishes at his home rounds in Portimao. So Oliveira, if he can get track position, is a threat. But this is the end of a demanding first weekend back for him from injury.
Yeah, and for Oliveira, it's one of those situations where the long race becomes really difficult. That's what he wants to be involved in a battle, just to keep his focus all the way through.
Mind of the tyre allocation and very little variation in tyre choice for race 1 yesterday. Stefano Manzi was the only man who opted for the harder SC2 front tyre. Otherwise, the rest of the field on the SC1 front, and everyone as expected on the SCX rear. It is the softest available for the feature length race.
Yeah, here in Misano, we haven't seen that significant drop in the rear tyre. Front tyre has been more of an issue for some riders, but ultimately, we saw in yesterday's race, all but Manzi out there on the same front tyre.
So a look at the starting grid, and just a single change to the front row after the Superpole race with Jari Montella up into P3. Biggest winner over the 10 laps this morning, Miguel Oliveira gaining 5 spots to start on row 2. Axel Bassani and Taz McKenzie each gained 3 places. Bassani into 4th and McKenzie into 9th. A costly retirement for Alex Lowe's means he drops from a hard-fought 3rd to just 10th on the grid for race 2. Tommy Brave, the only other rider dropping out of the top 9 following his crash. Sam Lowe's and Alvaro Bautista failed to make the expected progress. Lowe's because of a crash. Bautista 2.5 seconds short after starting from P17.
For Alvaro all the way back onto that 6th row. It's such a difficult race now for Bautista. He's already feeling the effects of those injuries from Most, but it's a long race here for 21 laps. He'll come back in towards the top 10 once again, but just not what he needs for a tough weekend whenever you're trying to make sure that for next season we're still going to the grid.
Even longer race in prospect if you're Gareth Burloff, starting from the very back of the grid after his crash in Superpole.
Yeah, and for Gareth, that just means it's a weekend where that Superpole session just conditions the rest of your weekend, and you can't afford to make a mistake like that.
Yeah, reality is the 2 Moto X riders and the 2 Hondas towards the back, relatively easy pickings, but then you find yourself Bautista, Van der Mark, all capable performers trying to work your way through.
And that's where it becomes really difficult, because the depth of field here in WorldSBK in terms of riding talent is really strong, and then in terms of machinery, a lot of the times there isn't that big of a difference between being 6th and 16th in terms of your lap times, and that means that around a track like Misano, where a 10th of a second is hard to find, it becomes very difficult to bridge gaps between you and the next group.
So Niccolo Bulliger will start once again from pole. He has won every race of this season, and all of them from pole position. He'll be lining up alongside Iker Lecuona and Jari Montella. Victory in the Superpole race earlier on today for Bulliger, a 40th career victory, 24 wins in a row, and 76 career podiums from 92 race starts, making him the Italian with the most podiums in WorldSBK history.
Yeah, and that run of form, he's out there making sure he can make it 21 wins in a row to start of the season. World Ducati week is in a couple of weeks. You'd expect that's where his future is confirmed, and the move to WorldSBK, all for the formality it seems, but for Bulliger, he's earned that move just by being so dominant this year.
Iker Lecuona, 2 second places for him. Hasn't been able to add to his laps led so far this weekend. He did streak away off the line to pass Bulliger in the run through turns 1 and 2 on the opening lap of race 1 yesterday, but ultimately
in their seasons. So your race 2 results from the Pirelli Emilia Romagna round here in Misano see Salvador take the win over Thompson and Seabright. Torres Bianchi Artigas missing out, as did Bolza and Vinucci, Gatti and Motorosino rounding out the top 10. Mirko Genai, Fede Fleerackers, Alvaro Fuertes, Juan Reseño, Kaz Beckman all inside the points. That Beckman's in front of Destroy, 7 seconds between Destroy and the points. Benya Fernandez, Alberto Maria, Troy Tavichka, Gonzalo Sanchez and Lars Veneman among the crashers, as were the Triumph duo Elia Bartolini and Thomas Bonetti. Bartolini remounting but outside of the points. This one goes to the championship standing, Salvador leading by 27 points. Xavi Artigas in 3rd position over Bowles and Vinucci. Carter Thompson's podium streak sees him move up 2 into 6th at the expense of Irachi with Fede Fleerackers in 8th. Manufacturers Championship then, Kawasaki extend their lead over Triumph to 70 points, Suzuki in 3rd, 80 points behind with Aprilia in 4th, Yamaha, Honda and Hove all awaiting their first win in the class. That's a wrap then for Sportbike Race 2, a weekend to remember for Bruno Irachi and David Salvador. After 3 successive rounds, Sportbike will skip Donington before returning with Mackie Corn. Next up on today's agenda is World Superbike Race 2, so stay tuned.
yesterday, Lowe's was outfought by Misano, who had a bit of a pace advantage in race 1, but had escaped clear of his teammates and had a bite between himself and Misano, with Alberto Sura sitting in 5th, only for Lowe's to then retire, Misano to come through on Sura, and it was a scoreless Superpole race, a real rarity for Alex Lowe's.
You can see there just on the grid though for Alex, 33 degrees right now, and it is very hot. That's why you're seeing riders just trying to keep themselves as cool as possible. Rare to see Alex with an ice pack in his face like that, just trying to keep that core temperature down, but basically as you sit on the grid in your leathers, very easy just to cook yourself and overheat.
Yeah, we said it when we came in this morning at 8 o'clock. If it's warm now, what's it going to be like by the peak of the afternoon's heat? Well, that's the answer. 53 degrees track temperature as we continue on through the 4th row with Tommy Bridewell starting here in P11. Originally qualified in 9th place, but it's been a tough start to the weekend for him. Down in 13th in race 1. He lost a bundle of positions on the opening lap, ended up down in 16th by the end of lap 1, and from there had a tough task to make back another few places. But then spill for him in the Superpole race. So 2 spots down, he'll be lining up from row 5, looking for his first top 10 finish of the weekend. Completing row number 4, Sam Lowe's, 2 retirements for him. Desperately needs to get some big points on the board here to at very least stem the bleeding, even if he can't quite get to Jari Montella, who, remember, is starting 7 places ahead of him here.
Yeah, tough again for Sam, and needs to make sure that he's able to come away with top 6 finish in this one. That means making a good start. 12th on the grid, it's a tough one for him, but you've got to make that progress, and basically needs to make sure he's able to follow Alex through in the early stages as well if you're not able to jump him off the line. You know that Alex under the motor is going to make progress, and you've got to be able to be there behind him.
Michael Ruben Rinaldi, former Aruba IT factory Ducati rider, of course, and 5-time race winner. And no longer in our paddock, but still racing, and good to have him here joining us in Misano.
Yeah, I had a good chat with Rinaldi last night as well, just to see how retirement's treating him, and he's still racing a little bit in the Italian Championship, but as he said, that's a hobby race now. It's where he's out there trying to put it all on the line like he has been a World Championship level.
5th row of the grid for Remy Gardner, Xavi Vierge and Stefano Manzi for Gardner retirements in race 1. We saw him crash out of proceedings and only 13th in the Superpole race, so no progress from where he started, and he'll again be in P13. Xavi Vierge also looking for a return to form, looking for his first top 10 finish of the weekend. Again, retirement in the Superpole race for him. It was 12th in race 1 from 14th on the grid yesterday.
Yeah, Locatelli's firmly established himself as that top Yamaha rider in the middle third of this season, and for Xavi, 12th yesterday, the crash this morning, it's just been tough, and he needs to regroup in the gap between them and Donington Park and then into the final rounds of the season.
Yeah, reality is there hasn't been that much between the Yamaha riders. There is on the grid here these 3 Yamahas on the 5th row, Gardner, Vierge and Manzi, and that's what's going to give Locatelli the advantage here. But otherwise, Gardner, Vierge, Manzi pretty much grappling with one another all weekend, and it's Manzi who's come out on that scrap with 2 10th place finishes to his name.
Manzi with that harder tyre has worked really well this weekend.
And we have 3 minutes to go now until the warm-up lap. It's down to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. I'm joined by some World Superbike royalty here, Neil Hodgson, former world champion, of course, in the paddock here, supporting along with the guys. Neil, I just want to ask you, we're witnessing one of probably the greatest Superbike seasons of all time. Nicolo is just on such a hot streak of form. As someone who won a world title in a similarly dominant fashion, just from Nicolo's perspective, what are the biggest challenges he has now?
Well, I think he's got such a lead now. It's almost like the pressure's on. I had a good start to my season, but then I crashed quite early on and then lost a bit of confidence. But you watch Buliga around the track. I've been here all weekend. He rides absolutely perfect. He gets the most out of the bike. He's clearly confident, and he doesn't look like he's going to make a mistake. So it must feel fantastic being him.
And just very quickly before I let you go, it is an incredible season he's having. Where do you think it ranks among the great Superbike seasons?
Well, do you know what? It's got its own qualities because we're experiencing something unique. And I said this many years ago when Marc Marquez won the first 10 races in MotoGP in 2014. You have to admire the talent and skill. You're watching someone, man and machine, in perfect harmony. So enjoy it while it lasts.
We will. Thanks for joining us, Neil.
quite relaxed back in my seat there. I thought I was back home watching the GP, but there we go. We're getting through the starting grid here with 22 riders in the field. It's an all Ducati front row. Nicolo Bulliga, Iker Lecuona and Jari Montella, but will they finish that way, the same way they've finished both races this weekend so far? Can anyone spring a surprise? Perhaps Lorenzo Baldassarri from the second row, or either the promoter or the BMW, Bassani and Oliveira. They'll be hoping to make a fast start here, but there's one man they've all got to catch, and that's Nicolo Bulliga. We have now had 10 consecutive Ducati podium lockouts, the same top two in each. The Aruba IT factory now well on course to settle the team's championship at the UK rounds. Another 4-1-2 finishes and they would be certain of the title before the summer break, and that would also be good enough to give them the manufacturer's title. In that recent spell this season, so far we have had identical podiums in all three races of the Portuguese round, with Miguel Oliveira joining Bulliga and Lecuona on the rostrum, at the Dutch round and the Aragon round with third places for Sam Lowe's, and in Most, where the factory bikes were joined by Jari Montella. The same top three as in the first two races of this weekend so far. Montella now looking to complete the set and extend his points margin. Important for Montella to build a bit of a buffer, because next time out we go to Donington Park and we know how strong both Sam and Alex Lowe's are at their home rounds.
And that could also be a place where the Aruba bikes are under pressure as well, just because speaking to a lot of the Ducati riders, Montella was pretty keen to stress that it's into turns like turn 4, we can see here, where the Aruba bikes are just able to shorten the braking zone a little bit. Somewhere like Donington can carry that corner speed through an awful lot of that track. Maybe that will help some of those bikes be able to challenge the Aruba bikes. Here this weekend though, Lecuona and Bulliga, they've got that step and everyone else. For Montella, it's about making sure that you're able to keep yourself in those podium spots, get 3 podiums for this weekend, and it's a really good home run.
As always, brilliantly well attended Pirelli Emilia-Romagna round. The spectator figures very similar to last season, and it is a venue we love to come to, so delighted that this weekend it was confirmed we'll be back here until at least 2031.
Yeah, I love this place, and for everyone to come to this track once is something that should happen, because there's so much history around this track. But you've also got the beach on your doorstep, you've got nice restaurants, the holiday destination for all the Italian fans. That's why it's so popular, and it's great we've got that contract extended.
Yeah, there can be plenty of bikes revving in the street outside the hotels during the night, haven't there?
The band outside our hotel as well has been great fun. And, good fun here in the track as well. You can see all the different fan clubs for each of the different riders. There was a lot of Bulliga flags even just around town as well, so obviously for all the Italian riders this round means so much for them, and we've heard that time and again from the different riders. Bulliga saying that the stage race win in front of a sea of Italian fans, just to win on an Italian bike on an Italian track.
Yeah, happiest I think we've ever really seen him riding so comfortable, looking so good in terms of championship points as well. 116 his lead over Iker Lecuona. The closer fight is for third. Jari Montella, the only scorer in that battle earlier on today. So Alex Lowe's 11 points behind, Sam Lowe's 12 behind, and Axel Bassani, who leapfrogged Lorenzo Baldassarri yesterday up into 6th, is 14 behind Sam Lowe's. It is race 2 of the 2026 Pirelli Emilia-Romagna round. Good reaction time from 4th position on the grid from Axel Bassani. He tops the nose of Jari Montella going in towards turn 1. Good for the neutrals here. Locatelli's coming round them as well to try and relegate that independent Ducati backwards. Iker Lecuona coming through on Nicolo Bulliga. Leads just as he did in race number 1. And it's Lecuona from Bulliga. How long will it take him to answer back this time? Bassani in third. Locatelli now finally through on Jari Montella. And watch out for Alex Lowe's. He clicks the side of Montella, who has a momentary wobble but just about recovers to the racing line in front of Alberto Sura in 7th. Taz McKenzie's got ahead of Miguel Oliveira, and Tommy Bridewell's made up a spot as well. He rounds out the top 10. Now, yesterday in race 1, it was here at turn 8 that Nicolo Bulliga found his way through on Iker Lecuona, and it's not on the entrance this time, it's on the exit, but he's done it again. Lecuona now has the inside as they make their way through Tremonto, turns 9 and 10, and Lecuona covers the line. So, he leads already deeper into any race than he has this weekend so far.
Yeah, really important for Iker to be able to make that jump off the start. You can see for Bulliga though, he's fast on the run up towards 11 as Iker runs off the line. And opens that door for Bulligan to come back past.
Frustration for Ika Lekwona. Now, can he immediately jab straight back, or has Bulligan got enough in hand as Alex Rose makes a very robust and late move there on Andrea Locatelli, but he gets it stopped nicely on the inside line. And this is bad news for Alvaro Bautista, already riding with an injury, his second weekend back, remember, after that crash at the Alcatron Mast. And we see him in the gravel trap on the opening lap of what's been a tough weekend here, coming to its conclusion in race 2.
Just a little bit of time before we come round to turn 8 again. We can see he was getting a bit of attention there as Lekwona tries to carry the speed through the second corner there to try and set something up. But let's see what happens to Alvaro in the middle of the pack here. And
3 into 1 doesn't go. Yeah.
And the quirk is like that as well, because there's a couple of different lines you can take through there. Look at maybe Alvaro got caught up a little bit in the bike as well, and that's what's left him a little bit knocked around.
The most important thing is we see him walking away, bearing in mind that he's riding with 3 fractures to his ankle. In the end, he is the only victim of that crash. Lap number 2, Nicolo Bulliga already 0.4 of a second ahead of Ika Lekwona, but we always said the race was for 3rd position here, and great news for the neutrals is that we've got Bassani and Lowe's on the promoters, then the Yamaha of Andrea Locatelli, ahead of the first of those independent Ducatis, Jari Montella, restricted to 6th.
Yeah, and a few riders with a lot of work to do. We saw in that opening lap, Lowe's made a fast start, and then we saw some riders falling further down the field. Montella, obviously one of them, but Bassani as well. A lot of work to do for Val, he's down in 15.
Jari Montella coming back through on Andrea Locatelli through Curvone, now up into 5th position. So it's Bulliga, Lekwona, Bassani, Alex Lowe's, and then Jari Montella, who already has the best part of a second to make up on Lowe's. And he's got to clear him before he can even think about getting onto the podium for the 3rd time this weekend. For 3rd place at very least, we have a race on our hands here.
Yeah, and the two promoters have been relatively closely matched this weekend, but it has been Bassani that's had a bit of an edge over Lowe's, so good opportunity for the two promoters to fight it out for a podium, but they need to make sure they don't fight with each other and bring this scrap back to them.
Alberto Sura and Andrea Locatelli have finished 6th and 7th in race 1, 7th and 8th in the Superpole race earlier on today, and they are now set to scrap it out for 6th position in this race. Sura less than a 10th of a second behind Locatelli as they make their way through turns 4 and 5. We're watching the 2 race leaders. Sura still behind Locatelli for the moment at least. There they are. Number 55 Yamaha, the blue bike, riding as well, frankly, as he has at any stage in this season. That's been such a tough one for the Japanese manufacturer. This race is going to get tougher for Locatelli because he's got 2 fast independent Ducatis of Alberto Sura and Taz McKenzie right on his tail. And it will be into turn 11 surely here where Sura tries to make his move on this lap number 3. There's Jari Montella. He's got in front of Alex Lowe's. So big margin made up, and Lowe's, you fancy, might have had an error. Behind him, let's see if Sura gets through on Locatelli as they make their way through turn 11. Not quite close enough this time.
Yeah, those were ran in deep into turn 8. That's what cost him time and momentum.
Oh, Sura thought about a move in a very unusual place there. Locatelli had enough to cover it. Will he jab down the inside now into turn 14? Sura so much more confident, and just like Alex Lowe did earlier on in the race, scything his way through down the inside at turn 14. Sura released down into 6th place.
Can't take that wide line into 14, just creates too many opportunities for someone to attack back.
Yes, and Locatelli has found that out now twice to his cost in this race so far, just the opening 3 laps. Half a second between the 2 race leaders, then 2 seconds back to Bassani. He's got 1 second in hand over Jari Montella. It's not going to be too much longer before Montella's right on Bassani's tail, though. Almost 0.4 of a second faster last time around for a new personal best for Montella at 1:33. 6 for him, and a personal best in each of the sectors. So Montella will swiftly gain. A margin that was 1.3 is now down to just a second.
Yeah, and Jari able to make that progress through on Alex Lowe's without costing himself time after Lowe's made that mistake. So that's why he's able to get hot in the heels of Bassani. This is going to be the crash for Battins Foglu, and very early there in turn 12 actually to run off like that before the entry into 13. But Battins, at least we were able to see there at the side of the track and relatively okay.
Andrea Locatelli is going to be in trouble here from the group behind because he was 0.3 of a second slower last lap around than McKenzie, 4/10 slower than Oliveira, Gardner and Van der Mark, and the rest of the group behind faster as well. Locatelli made a good start, just as he did in the Superpole race earlier on, but he doesn't have the pace to go with it. Will he fall prey again here into turn 15? Turn 14 is going to be even earlier than that this time around as Miguel Oliveira comes through for 8th for the 7th position. Sorry, Taz McKenzie comes through for the 7th position, and now Miguel Oliveira next in line. He sits in 9th.
Yeah, Oliveira's going to make pretty swift progress as well. It's a good move from Taz, brave move as well. We saw Gareth Burlock running off the track and turn in the background as well. It shows just how difficult it is out there. It's a slick track, and for the riders it means that the grip is very easy just to lose out there. As you can see, Ryan Vickers has had a crash, and it looked like it was just a technical issue there for Baldassarri because his leathers were fine, the wings were intact, but for Vickers, that's another crash in this one.
Low-scoring weekend for Lorenzo Baldassarri, who is back up and running for the moment at least, but right at the back of the field, having started this race in 5th following the same results in the Superpole race. He crashed out of race 1, and this is going to drop him well out of contention now for the bronze medal ranking this season.
Yeah, we saw Balda at the side of his bike on the side of the track, just looking at his gear shift, which maybe just a problem there where it's been stuck in gear or something like that. So for Balda, at least he was rejoin, but not an awful lot to be had in this one for him.
Yeah, other than a red flag that would reset us, of course, that's about it as far as Baldassarri is concerned. As early as lap 15 of 21, Nicolo Bulliger with a new fastest second sector of anyone, and that sector alone 3/10 of a second faster than Ika Lekwona, and it does look like this is where Bulliger will finally break away. He's already 2/10 faster than Bulliger last lap around to open the gap to 6/10. The margin is now up to the best part of a second. Andrea Locatelli providing much of the entertainment in this race so far, as he has tumbled gradually backwards from a strong grid position and a fast start, and now Miguel Oliveira all over the back of him, just a 10th of a second between.
Taz McKenzie's going to be worth keeping an eye on, because Taz is top 5 finishing in this race, as he'll be able to just try and come through on Sura, match the pace of Alex Lowe and see if you're able to come back into it, but definitely keep an eye on Taz in the second half of this one.
Yeah, at the moment, Sura is just as fast, if not faster, than McKenzie. But we know that second half of these long races is where Sura begins to struggle. New personal best for him last time around, a 1 minute 34 flat, so actually 2/10 faster than Alex Lowe. Ika Lekwona running off the circuit, just as he did in race 1 in frustration yesterday. He's now 2.4 seconds back. Part of that comes down to Nicolo Bulliger's new fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 32.735.
Yeah, the exact same as what we saw yesterday from Ika, unfortunately, and the race is run now for Bulliger. As long as he's able to stay free, he'll be able to manage this race via his bitboard. Lekwona needs to do the same. He's got a similar gap back towards Misano, 2.5 seconds either way.
Yeah, it was always the reality that the race here was for 3rd position, but we didn't realise quite how good it was going to be, because Bassani made that fast start, cut across the nose of Jari Montella. Other riders got ahead of Montella as well, and that's given him a buffer for the best part of a second now. Bassani ahead of Jari Montella, actually opening the gap on this lap 6 so far.
It's a bit of frustration there in the Pichetti pit box, and it's a tough weekend for them with Gareth Burlock here, as Burlock tries to regroup after that mistake a couple of laps ago.
Miguel Oliveira off the circuit altogether, having been right on the tail of Andrea Locatelli. He's now in the clutches of Remy Gardner. He's off at 4/10 of a second in that one sector alone there, and Gardner's punished him for it. So Oliveira, instead of fighting Locatelli for 8th position, remember those two had a scrap over 7th in race 1 yesterday, Oliveira now finds himself down in P10.
Yeah, and for Miguel, it's about trying to make sure that you're able to be consistent. He's obviously got that injury that he's had to deal with. This is a tough physical race, and in 34 degrees air temperature, it's just really difficult for the riders, especially once you're behind another rider and you don't get any of that relief of a little bit of fresh air.
So 3 seconds between Nicolo Bulliger and Ika Lekwona now. Another 3 back to Axel Bassani. Jari Montella coming back at Bassani in the 3rd sector of that previous lap. So again, the margin is back to half a second. Then a second to that scrap between Alex Lowe, Alberto Sura still a second behind him, not making any progress as yet. As Miguel Oliveira, well, we did see him slowing up after running off the circuit last time around, and he slowed up again now. This is going to be terminal for him. And the weekend that obviously has been a tough one physically for Miguel Oliveira. Looks like it's going to finish with a non-score here in race 2.
Yeah, but it's been good to see Miguel back out on track, and he's ridden well and shows that there's a lot of potential between him and the BMW package.
Yeah, 8th and a 6th in the 2 races thus far. It does look like being a non-scorer here in race 2, and the positions being somewhat settled by attrition. Worth mentioning that Sam Lowe, we saw him a couple of moments ago, he's now up to 12th place. Chapter, Bridewell, Gerloff, Ratto, all still running, and Manzi, Baldassarri, Vickers, they're all riders who've hit podiums earlier on in the race at the back of the field, so some points to be gained here for Sam.
Yeah, and just as you can see there, Firm just doesn't look confident on the bike, and obviously after those two crashes, it's going to be tough to bounce back from it, but this just looks like it's a race where you're trying to come away with a top 10 finish with a bit of attrition in front of you.
Yeah, a little bit like the end of the weekend in Most, where he failed to score in the first two races and took 12th place for 4 points in race 2 at the end of the weekend. We're in a very similar scenario here, not least because Jari Montella is closing on Axel Bassani and does have the chance to make it 3 podiums out of 3 this weekend.
Yeah, and for Jari, obviously, he's got that confidence, he's got a tail up, doesn't want to give Bassani the chance of nabbing a home podium, but Axel's riding really well, still lapping in the 33s and only a few tenths of a second slower than everyone in front of him. So Axel this weekend has been as good as we've seen from him since Phillip Island.
If Bassani gets on the podium, I'm claiming it for me, because I made such a fuss over the 10 Ducati podium right out at the start of the programme. Again, the gap's oscillating, isn't it? Because there are sectors where Bassani makes up a couple of tenths over Montella, and then the third sector, Montella seems to make quite a lot of ground on Bassani.
Yeah, and there's just that margin has sort of stayed around the half-second gap, and for Bassani, you can see there just that big slide through turn 12, but that's going to give Montella an edge through this section and then flows up even further. So the pressure's on Axel Bassani, and it's a long way to go with 2 rounds of the race still remaining.
Yeah, there it is again. Another 2 tenths of a second in that third sector. It's each lap around through there, but Montella gains a little bit on Bassani, even though Bassani elsewhere in the lap stretches it out slightly. It's enough that Montella closes gradually with each passing lap. We're into lap 9 now, 2.8 between Bulliger and Lecuona, only 3 tenths between Bassani and Jari Montella. And good work from Alex Lowe's last time around, the new personal best. Still in the 1:33s. In fact, he was faster even than Bulliger last time around. Less than a second now from Jari Montella.
Yeah, and just trying to dig in as well as he can. Obviously, technical issue in this morning's race, and that's what rocked him in for chance to come away with top 5 finishes in all 3 races this weekend. But we might well be viewing it that maybe there's a little bit more than just top 5 on offer.
Yeah, particularly if Bassani holds back Montella for long enough while Lowe's is at the current pace. That gap is now down to less than a second as Alex Lowe's kicks on from P5. Just in the background of your shot, you can see that Alberto Surra still ahead of Taz McKenzie. There's only 3 tenths of a second between them.
A little bit of dust there as well for the riders to come through, but obviously at this stage of the race, the groups start to stretch out a little bit, and for Axel Bassani trying to make sure that you're still hitting them off. The next couple of corners, that's where we saw him have that big slide last time around. Let's see if it's something similar again on this lap, because Montella is very good through Carbone, and well, Bassani's taking the route out towards the grandstands there, but able to hold on to that momentum. He'll obviously have that as a mark against his boot, but that's where Montella just gains the confidence knowing that Bassani just doesn't have a bike in those couple of corners.
Unfortunately for Alex Lowe's, 3 tenths of a second loss for him in the third sector, so he must have made a mistake just when he had the opportunity, because Bassani is now going to be able to hold up Jari Montella as they sit in 3rd and 4th places. The gap opens back up to 1.4. That might be a critical error from Alex Lowe's last time around.
Yeah, and that's where ultimately you can't really afford to give up that ground and lose half a second. So the time that he gained that previous lap, he's getting it right back.
It does go to show what the Bimota can do in clear air, doesn't it, with track position over the independent Ducati.
Yeah, the motor's a really good package, and one of those situations where if you left it where we just had a 21-lap time trial, you'd fancy their chance of being able to fight against the independent bikes, but ultimately when you're in a racetrack position,
forget about time trial, we'll just do a full reverse grid for the rest of the season and see what happens from there.
They're still going to be put to the back a lot of times, but the amount of times we've seen the Mimotas up there inside the top 6, but when you look at what we've been able to see here from Bassani, he keeps giving himself that chance to reopen the gap in the first half of the lap, but those mistakes through Carbone and into turn 12, that really does prove costly as the race progresses.
And Bassani can't afford Montella within 2 tenths of him exiting Tremonto, because that's going to be Montella straight through.
This is going to be interesting riding on board. You can see how much curve that Montella uses on the entry to the corner. And on this lap at least, Bassani a little bit tighter through 11 and 12, gets the bike back into the right-hander then for 13, 14, then the slow corner. You can see that Axel's a lot tidier there than Montella was, but Montella's still able to carry the momentum through there.
So Alex Lowe's a 1:34.8 last time around. That's why he dropped off the back of Montella, who'd put in a 1:34.2 on lap number 9. We'll see what the times are like at the end of this one. Alex Lowe's has had his last 2 laps where he has exceeded track limits at turn 11, so he's going to have to be careful of that one. Faster than Montella by a fraction last time around, which is all he can do at this stage of the race. But the stewards will be watching for exiting the track at running wide at turn 11.
Yeah, and certainly for Lowe's something where he'll have to consider it, but you've still got to give yourself the opportunities to push on, because he's got 2 seconds in hand over Taz McKenzie behind him, and he'll try to make sure that in the second half of this race he can just manage that gap. But Montella's closer to Bassani than he has been over the last few laps.
Yep, again though, losing a tenth of a second in the opening sector of this lap 11, and that is where the Bimotor is performing well in the first half a lap. But as I said previously, if Montella can get the gap down, exiting turn 10 to less than 2/10 of a second, that's where he's going to have the opportunity in that sequence of turns 11 to 40.
Just able to use so much less track on the Duke.
11 to 40.
Just able to use so much less track on the Duke. Just able to use so much less track on the Duke.
Can get the gap down, exiting turn 10 to less than 2/10 of a second. That's where he's going to have the opportunity in that sequence of turns 11 to 40.
Just able to use so much less track on the Duke.
The Teams Championship will take care of itself before the summer break.
Yeah, and obviously with the summer break coming up, Ducati would love to get those championships done and dusted, but for the Donington round in 4 weeks, that could be a very different challenge for them. And we've already seen just how, for the independent Ducati, how some of the bikes are able to put themselves in the mix and make it difficult for them. Maybe at Donington could be something similar at the front, but you can see again here for Bassani, just through turns 12 and 13 in particular, especially 13, Montella's just so much faster through there. Bassani's having to use all that angle to try and get around there. It's going to be a long last 9 laps for Bassani to try and hold off Montella.
It is, but he's done a wheel-perfect job thus far, hasn't he? We haven't seen too many issues or mistakes from Bassani that have been punished by Montella at very least. And again, crosses the line, half a second in hand. So where he needs to, Bassani is just about doing enough. We did also see Montella running a little bit wide there through turn 14 at the end of lap 12, and that's given Bassani a bit more breathing room.
Yeah, and Axel is doing a really good job. We saw in yesterday's race as well, he was able to be mistake-free. This is one of those weekends where he's been at his best, and that makes it difficult for Montella to come through. And this is where experience matters as well. Bassani obviously has plenty of starts under his belt. Montella, first season really as a regular front-running contender. So that's where for Jari, this is one of those situations where you need to just bide your time.
Yes, Axel Bassani reached 200 starts yesterday, while Jari Montella is still in the 50s. His 100 starts at Barney Ducati, including his 44 Supersport starts for them. But Jari Montella sitting in 4th place here, still not able to find a way through on Axel Bassani. It is a race-long scrap. It's the one we anticipated, and I'm so glad we've got it because it's quietening down further back down the order. A quick mention of the Yamahas while we've got a moment. Andrea Locatelli less than a second now behind Alberto Sura in the race for 7th, and Remy Gardner starting to close up as well last lap around. A 1:34.1 for him compared to a 1:34.3 for Andrea Locatelli. So Gardner does at least have a chance of finishing top Yamaha.
Yeah, and you can see here for Bassani just how hard you have to push to try and keep Montella behind him in the areas of the track where your bike is working well, and he's certainly able to have a lot of confidence on that front end, and he's making a count.
Yeah, personal best second sector last lap around for Jari Montella. That's what he's got to do. Iron out the areas of the circuit where Bassani is at his strongest, so that when he heads into the sectors of the track where he can make advantage, he's close enough to try and pass.
Yeah, they're both still lapping within a couple of tenths of a second of their fastest laps of the race, so they're doing a really good job to be able to maintain that consistency. And for Bassani, you can see there for his crew with Yuri looking on, his crew chief, just trying to make sure that their man had the bike underneath him that he needed. And for Axel, a bit of a bobble on the entry and Dave, but he's doing everything he can.
And still, Alex Lowe's maintaining the same pace as the two riders ahead of him. The gap's still 1.3 as it has been for most of this race. The problem for Alex all dates back to that retirement in the Superpole race. Otherwise, he'd be right there in the mix for the podium as well.
Yeah, and I think for Alex, that's where top 5 is a really good finish. He was top 5 yesterday and would have been in the Superpole race, and that's the sign of a good, consistent weekend for Lowe's.
Let's look back through the order then. This is Taz McKenzie. He's up to 6th position. Remember, started the weekend with 12th in Superpole, climbed to 9th in the Superpole race, now up to 6th. So good progress as this Emilia-Romagna round has gone on. Over a second ahead of Alberto Surra. Another second back to Locatelli, who is fading now compared to Surra, having initially put a bit of a spurt on to try and close him down. And he might have Gardner for company in the final third of this race, which would be some effort from Remy Gardner. As for BMW, Michael van der Mark in the top 10. Obviously, a lot of chaos in the early laps of this race, but I think that would be a well-deserved effort from van der Mark, who did, to be fair, finish 11th in the Superpole race earlier on today as well.
Yeah, and just the pace is the key thing for Leclerc all the way down to Surra. They're all lapping within a tenth of a second of each other, or 2 tenths of a second of each other. So just shows the pace there from that second group. That's also why for Locatelli, just because he's dropped off by a couple of tenths of a second, it's pushed him into a little bit of no man's land now, with 2.5 seconds in front of him to Surra and about the same gap back to Gardner.
Now, Jari Montella last time around slipped his pace slightly, a 1:34.250. Again in the opening sectors of this lap 15. Bassani pulling further clear. The gap is now 7 tenths of a second. This is an opportunity for Bassani to really consolidate that podium position.
Yeah, and we saw last time around how much Axel was pushing down in towards turn 8. Big bobble on the entry, just trying to get on the brakes, get the speeds dropped off. So we know that he's given it everything he has. Montella might well have to just settle into this one and just say, do you know what? If I come away with 2 podiums and a 4th place finish, that's ideal. That's exactly what I need to do for 3rd in the World Championship.
Yeah, he's ahead of Alex Lowe's in 5th. He's ahead of Sam Lowe's in 12th. So it would be big points gained over the course of this weekend if things were to stay as they are at present. Montella will be 21 points up on Sam Lowe's and 13 points up on Alex Lowe's, going admittedly into the UK round, home round for both Alex and Sam next time out. And Sam in particular is going to be keen to reset after this one, as he has done previously already, of course, because he had a miserable weekend in Master, then immediately 3 podiums in Aragon last time.
Yeah, and I think that's where it becomes important to be able just to have that bounce back. Obviously in Master, one of those tough weekends, he was able to bounce back from it, and needs to do the same after this round and just regroup, get your points there in this race and just move on from Misano.
Lap 16 of 21 then. Your closest fights are outside of the top 10 positions. Michael van der Mark half a second ahead of Xavi Vierge, 10th and 11th places. Sam Lowe still with a chance. He's a couple of tenths faster than both of the riders in front of him to get into the top 10. 1.5 seconds then back to Garrett Gerloff, who I can tell you has just got through on Untitled Chapter for 13th. Last those points-paying positions occupied by Tommy Bridewell. It's been a tough weekend for him.
It has been a tough weekend for Bridewell, and certainly we were able to see in the Superpole session able to come away with top 10 qualifying effort is a good performance for him.
Lap 16 of 21 then. New personal bests from Ika Lekwona still this late into the race in sector 2, but the gap is 4.6 seconds still between your top 2. Nothing Lekwona can do can bridge that.
Yeah, important here for Bassani. We've mentioned about the fact that he's been able to maintain his pace and keep opening those gaps. One of the key things for him, just trying to manage his pace all the way through the race, and they've done a good job with that bike and the compromises that you need to make sure at the end of the race you've still got as much feeling as you can at the start of the race. So Bimoto doing a really good job with Bassani's bike.
And still half a second ahead of Jari Montella in that fight for a place on the podium. Alex Lowe's 1.5 seconds back now in 5th. He's settled in to bring that one home, you'd suggest.
I think certainly at this stage, knowing that he's got a comfortable margin in hand over Taz McKenzie, just got to make sure he gets to the finish. Taz coming under a little bit of pressure there from Surra. That got down to just over half a second.
Yes, as you say, margin, gap, he'll take either at this stage of the race, just to have a bit of breathing room.
Checker flag.
Alberto Sura doing well in the late phase of the race. This is important for him because we have seen it particularly the first few rounds of the season where he'd just burn up the tyre and tumble backwards. Obviously the better grid position and not stressing himself fighting as much has helped over the last few rounds, but he's actually starting to come back at Taz McKenzie here. So we see Axel Bassani from third position going down, I think that's LaQuercia, and out of a podium position just 5 laps from the end of race 2. Disaster for Misano after a near perfect ride throughout this afternoon.
Yeah, such a shame for Axel. We did see that moment on the entry to LaQuercia a couple of laps ago, and just trying to give himself the chance to pull right on board with Montella. And you can see for Yari as well, very easy to get sucked into that corner and almost have the same incident. Bassani here. Everyone just goes away from him.
What a shame. After such a great ride as well. And there's the reaction in the pit box. They can all barely believe it. And there is Axel Bassani. Gravel's still coming out as he makes his way round. He's obviously out of contention for the points-paying positions. And what a different end to this weekend it could have been after 4th place finishes in races 1 and the Superpole race. And he was looking good to end the weekend on a high with a rostrum finish, and instead now we're looking at yet another Ducati podium lockout of Bolliger, Lecuona and Montella, as it's been throughout this weekend.
Yeah, it's such a shame there for Bassani, but he's ridden really well this weekend. Obviously has his contract extension in the bag for next season, but he wanted that podium, and he had done enough to be able to keep that gap, but it shows just how hard you have to ride. Even when you've got what looks like a comfortable margin in hand, you're having to be on that limit at all times.
Yeah, and maybe even more so with that package. That's why the Ducatis have so often this season said, well, the advantage that they have is the comfort they can ride the bike with, particularly when they're in clear air, and they can pick their lines, they can carry a lot of corner speed without too many risks.
Yeah, and ultimately for Bassani, disappointment for him, and understandable, he wanted that home podium, but this is the best we've seen of him since round 1, so hopefully by the time we get to Donington Park he's able to build on this as well and get himself ready for the last round before the summer break.
Yeah, this is where the team comes in important, doesn't it? Needs a big arm round his shoulder now, and the round of applause. It was a good ride, it has been a good weekend, despite the fact that ultimately it is a non-scoring race too.
Yeah, and the Provac team, they do a great job of always being able to be there for their riders in good times and in bad times. And for Axel, unfortunately, this is one of those tough moments at a home round. You want to always be able to have that chance to shine.
Bolliger leads Lecuona and now Montella in 3rd position. Alex Lowe still 1.5 seconds back. Has never been able to make more of an impression than that, so unlikely that we see a change there. This is Sam Lowe's. He's now 11th place. Just hasn't had the confidence to pass Xavi Vierque. He gained on Vierque and Van der Mark about 0.2 seconds a lap, and once he's got there, he hasn't been able to find his way through.
Yeah, after the 2 crashes this weekend, I think it's understandable for Sam that the goal is just get through to the end of this one, don't force an issue, and for him, it's just about trying to come away with those points.
Problem is he's got the late race master Gareth Gerloff right behind him now, 0.4 seconds a lap faster than the 2 riders ahead of him, and Gerloff rubbing his hands together here with a chance of a top 10 finish, which from the back of the grid in all 3 races this weekend has been a tough round for him, but Gerloff with an opportunity to get some reward for his efforts here.
Yeah, Gareth on the number
was unwise. And that's going to cost him as he tried to close down Sam Lowe's, and Lowe's is now going to go elbow to elbow with Xavi Vierque. Vierque looks, takes a brief glance, knows that he's there, but there's nothing he can do. Sam Lowe's turns the bike back nicely, and it's Sam Lowe's now up into 10th position, released from behind Xavi Vierque at last on lap 19.
Yeah, good move there from Lowe's, and good riding from Xavi as well. Just for Gareth Gerloff, last time around, still within 1/10 second of his fastest lap of the race. So, like you said, Alex, just always a master at the end of the race and managing that tyre.
Now, can Sam Lowe's get after Michael van der Mark? Has he got time enough on these last 2 laps? Extra point for the World Championship, of course. This would mean that he would be 12 points behind Jari Montella, because, of course, Montella's inherited a position going up to 3rd. So, working out quite nicely as far as he is concerned. As we come now into the penultimate lap, Bolliger, Lecuona, Montella is how they stand, and Alex Lowe's has backed off the pace now into the 1:35. Just bring home that 4th place, 3 seconds ahead of Taz McKenzie behind him.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about comfort now for those riders in the leading positions. McKenzie has the second in hand over Sura as well, so this is where the battle is for the last couple of laps, to see if Michael van der Mark on the BMW is able to
there in P10, and half a second already gained back on Van der Mark since we last checked in with the turbo.
Yeah, and it's about trying to just make that move with confidence and make it nice and clean, just like we did last time around with David Vieira. We'll see if Sam's able to get close enough to the BMW to try something into 9 and 10, but probably too far back on this lap, but definitely on the last lap, there's going to be an opportunity for him to try and attack.
And look how quickly Gareth Burloff is home back in on Chapter Vieira as well. 2/10 of a second faster in Sector 1, 3/10 of a second faster in Sector 2 with a new personal best through there. So we will have 2 scraps in the remaining 1.5 laps. Van der Mark versus Sam Lowe's now 3/10 of a second between them, 9th and 10th. 2/10 of a second between Vieira and Gerloff, 11th and 12th.
Yeah, and Gerloff, again, just so good at the end of races. It's one little thing for a team. It's always tough. You're trying to find a way to get him switched on earlier and earlier in races with the tyre. But this was a difficult weekend for him. Started at the back of the field after that crash in the Superpole session, and he's come through well.
Nothing to choose now between Van der Mark and Sam Lowe's. Sam trying to pick up an extra place and World Championship points as he tries to limit the damage of a hat-trick of podiums this weekend in prospect for Jari Montella. Sam not quite close enough in towards turn 1, but he does set a new personal best lap of 1:42.297. So again, a few tenths of a second taken out over Van der Mark, who's really going to have eyes in the back of his head on this final lap here.
Yeah, and again, for Sam, you can just see just the effects of the 2 crashes earlier on in the race, and just having to try and make sure you're able to manage things then to just avoid and making another mistake. But if he's able to pick off Van der Mark, at least the top line is something where he's been able to recover well, having been outside the points earlier in the race.
Nicola Bulliger in the low 1:34s now, but relentless pace in the mid 1:33s for much of this race. And he has amassed a lead, and it's coming up towards what it was at the end of race 1 yesterday, disappointingly for Ika Leclerc.
Yeah, everyone's kind of just in that similar position as yesterday. Montana in and around that 13-14 seconds back of the race winner, and Bulliger just able to soak it in with the crowd.
Enjoying his support at home this weekend, Nicola Bulliger claims the record for the most hat-tricks in a single season. Bulliger's 7th unbeaten weekend in 2026, and it is yet another Aruba IT Ducati 1-2. Leclerc in second. Third will go to Jari Montella. A little bit of a gift with the fall for Axel Bassani, but it is 3 round finishes at the Emilia-Romagna round for him and Barney Ducati to celebrate his 100th start with the team. Alex Lowe's over the line in 4th position, his best of the weekend despite starting from 10th on the grid, and Taz McKenzie with his best dry weather finish. It's P5 for him. Surra, Locatelli, Gardner in that order, and Michael van der Mark delighted to cross the line in 9th, holding on ahead of Sam Lowe's by less than a 10th of a second.
Yeah, another decent performance from Van der Mark in as that replacement rider for BMW. He switched sides in the garage this weekend. He had been working with Miguel Oliveira's crew for a few rounds. Now he's back with his own crew in place of Petrucci, but still able to grind out a decent result there in 9th.
5 seconds between Bulliger and Leclerc in the end. So Leclerc, much as he might have thought after the Superpole race that he could make a bigger fight of it here, is going to have to wait on to the next round now at Donington Park to try and end the run that goes to 7 consecutive hat-tricks in 2026.
He did a better job in this one for those early laps to stick with Bulliger, but once he got past 5 or 6 laps, he ran off the track, and then the gap was just too big, and ultimately you can't afford to give any time to Nicola Bulliger at this stage.
No, leading every lap this weekend, starting all the races from pole, the 3 fastest laps. It has literally been a perfect weekend for Bulliger.
Yeah, new lap record and all the things that you want at your home round, and he's just relentless with that desire to make sure he's able to keep Leclerc in his place, and he's been able to do it all season.
Quick word for Taz McKenzie, great performance from him. It's also about not just the finishing position, but the riders that he beats, because he's ahead of Alberto Surra, who has been in a rich vein of form over the last few rounds, and that despite starting 2 places behind him on the grid here in race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, really good effort from Taz, and we've been able to see it where this season he's made that big step forward in terms of being able to give himself those opportunities to have some top 10 finishes, and a top 5 in the dry conditions. That shows an awful lot for him, and it's good to be able to bounce back after the disappointment of the previous round in Aragon, and now he's got a really good weekend to show for himself. One of the big things for a team like MGM Ducati is that you want to have points scored in all 3 races, and he hasn't been able to do that this weekend.
Yeah, it was a 10th place finish, of course, sorry, 11th place finish in race 1, making it even better than it was. 9th place in the Superpole race for a single point, but this one will be the crowning glory. It does prove that when one of those independent Ducatis gets a bit of track position, runs in clear air, and is able to show at their best, like we've seen from Tommy Bridewell before. Well, this weekend it was Taz Mackenzie's turn.
Yeah, so often it just comes down to having that track position, whether it's from the Superpole race or the Superpole session. And we've seen Bridewell do well in the last 2 qualifying efforts, but for Mackenzie, you can see the importance of being able to get that 9th place finish in this morning's race, and then it just sets the scene for what we saw in this afternoon.
Yeah, Bridewell doing well actually to get that 9th place in Superpole, because he only had one hot lap in the end, but not really able to use it. And I think don't underestimate the value of past experience at this venue in particular. Bridewell in his first Emilia-Romagna round this weekend.
Yeah, it is one of those situations where in these kind of conditions with now on 60 degrees track temperature, it's really difficult to know what to expect. And a few riders have said that the difference between the 50 degrees and 55 degrees isn't that significant, because you just get that grease that makes it very slick and slippery out there. But you need to know that and have that experience.
Sam Lowe's coming home in 10th position in the end. There's still a long way to go, isn't there, in this championship fight? I think I erroneously said 12 points earlier on. I meant 22. That will be the gap to Jari Montella after that race. But it's the kind of margin that with 3 podiums for Sam next time out, he would be capable of recovering.
Yeah, it's just been up and down for that battle for third in the championship. That's where the performance of Alex Lowe's have been really impressive, because that retirement in this morning's Superpole race, that cost him quite a few points in his fight for third in the championship, and he's very much in the thick of it because he's not making mistakes.
So a gap that was 12 points earlier on today sees Jari Montella add another 10 to it as he takes 3rd position with Sam Lowe's down in 10th. A little bit of good fortune for Montella to inherit that 3rd position. You've got to feel for Axel Bassani.
Yeah, for Bassani, it's one of those situations where the crash, at that stage, he had opened up enough of a gap and probably had it where there was that bit of comfort behind him, but so easy to have a crash whenever you're having to feel like you're being pushed at all times. And unfortunately for Bassani, he's not got the podium to show, and you lose that bit of momentum as well, because this has been a really good weekend for him, and the standout memory for him is now going to be the last thing to happen.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, and he will go back and try again. The other thing that's a shame for Bassani is had he come away with the 3rd position, it was a big pool of points that would have put him right back in that group battling for 3rd in the World Championship, and instead, again, he finds himself a little bit distant, 28 points now, the gap to Alex Lowe's, and I don't think that's a fair assessment of what this weekend has been overall.
No, and I think for Bassani, obviously, that's what's going to be the thing that makes him feel a little bit frustrated after it. But ultimately, he's out there and he's ridden really well this weekend, and that should be the thing that stands out in him.
And ultimately, he's not done anything wrong putting it on the line to try and get a podium, has he?
Yeah, it's very different if you're crashing out a 3rd versus crashing out a 13th. And I think that's where you can see the reaction from the team that knew the challenge he was facing.
Yeah, and he did receive a round of applause. He made his way back in as well. So there's your checkered flag in race number 2, and confirmation of the result with a victory for Nicolo Bulliger by 5.1 seconds over Iker Lecuona. Jari Montella gets 2 seconds in the end ahead of Alex Lowe's. Taz Mackenzie, his best dry weather finish with P5, ahead of Alberto Sora, who has never been out of the top 7 in the 3 races this weekend, finishes race 2, where he finished race 1 and where he qualified originally, so that's a fair reflection of his pace. Top Yamaha again, Andrea Locatelli did well to dig in mid-race when Remy Gardner was starting to close. In the end, 7 tenths between them. Michael van der Mark just about holding on ahead of Sam Lowe's, and that was his fight for 9th position. He was delighted to come away with that result. Vierge just about beating Gerloff for 11th. Chatra with points for 13th. He has been the only scorer for quite some time now for Honda. Bridewell, and then Lorenzo Baldassari, after his earlier technical issues, coming home for a single point. So I'm sure that'll be of little consolation, but he does gain 1 point back on Axel Bassani after his retirement. Championship standings, Bulliger 121 over Lecuona. Ducati 242 now over Bemota, and with a 1-2-3 in that race, just moving them 1 step closer towards both the teams and manufacturers' world championships. And we expect those to be wrapped up at Donington Park in less than a month's time.
Yeah, and for Ducati and for Aruba, it'll be a very early championship celebrations for them, but hard to bet against it in the Formula they're in.
Well, I was being asked about it earlier on. When's it going to be wrapped up? We need to know to make our preparations. And my immediate comment was, start making your preparations. Because I don't think there's much doubt, whether it's before the summer break or after it, we're going to have a Teams and Manufacturers champion in red. And a Riders' World champion certainly in red as well. And Niccolo Bulliger totally in command this season. Has been a masterclass, hasn't it? And just what Iker Lekwon has been put through by his teammate over the course of this year so far.
Yeah, and you can see that frustration for Iker yesterday, and I think he's probably going to be frustrated after this one as well. You can see it firm down there in Park Ferme. It's those moments where for Ciccone, for Serafino, they need to be able to help Iker. And I don't know if we need translation. That Iker's a little bit aspirated.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of words for that. Niccolo Bulliger, Iker Lekwon, Jari Montella is your podium trio. Second time this season that Jari Montella has managed a full weekend on the rostrum, and again, they're all third places here in Misano.
Jari, that's a hat-trick of podiums here in the scorching heat of Misano. Just tell us how you're feeling.
Oh, tired. In that moment, I'm so tired because I was pushed on the race after the first lap. That was not my best. I had the overtake from Axel and one from Axel low, so I was a race to manage, you know. I was trying to push and try to catch Axel, but realistically I didn't have the pace to catch him, so I was just there, try to keep the gap like 0.5, 0.6 to make that Axel was pushing for open the gap. Because at the end, with this hot condition, I think that the temperature of the front tire was too high. But anyway, it was a soft race, but we are on the podium, so happy, so proud. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the team. Grazie a tutti voi ragazzi, siete bellissimi. Bellissimo.
Congratulations, Ian Dunnington.
Thank you.
Yeah, but Motor, fancy pairing Axel and Alex. You're asking for trouble, aren't you? But we won't put Jari Montella there. This is the moment that he inherited the podium place, but reality is he's had podium pace all weekend long, hasn't he? Two third places in race 1 and the Superpole race. He just needed a little bit of assistance in the latter stages of race 2.
Yeah, you can see there for Misano, doesn't make a big mistake, but he ends up missing it in that podium spot. And Jari, I think he's dead right in saying that you're going to have a break after this one, because 3 races in really hot conditions are very tough for the riders. And on a day like today, when you've got the Superpole race and then a shortened time before you have to get back out for the second race of the day as well with the schedule this week, makes it even more difficult. But that's what you got to train for. And you can see for Barney down there as well, that just able to enjoy that success. They've really put a lot of resources into getting Montella to be as competitive as possible this year.
But there is still no stopping the Aruba IT Ducati pairing of Niccolo Bulliger and Iker Lekwon.
Iker, we could see some of your frustrations getting off the bike there. Just talk us through the race and your feelings now.
Yeah, honestly, I'm very frustrated by myself, not with the team. The team did a good job. We tried everything. We changed the bike, we take the risk. I'm happy for the team, and also by myself. From some side, I'm happy because we are P2 in the championship. We take some points to Jari, that is P3, so that is the positive point. But for me, the negative is that this weekend I'm not in the level of Niccolo. I'm frustrated. I think after the sprint race that we did a step, but the reality is now that in all the fast corners I cannot be on track. I go a lot of times wide. I do a lot of mistakes during the race. I'm very frustrated because I'm not on the pace. No, not for the second place, just because at the end I need to do it like yesterday, roll off, manage the car with the rear, don't care about Niccolo, and that's it. So it's frustrating for me, honestly. But the only thing we can do is working. So yeah, thanks to the team because he did everything. He tried everything, and yeah, maybe I need to rest a little bit and rest it for Donington. Thank you.
See you in Donington.
Common theme there, isn't there? A little bit of a rest. It has been a grueling schedule, hasn't it? Because we've had the 5 rounds, 15 races in just 9 weeks, and it's not surprising that everyone feels like a bit of a reset is in order. 3 weekends off now.
Yeah, for the riders, the biggest challenge is to be able to have that momentum and keep the momentum all the way through this part of the season, because this is where we've had the busy part of the year. Now you get time off before Donington, and for some riders that means time off to recover from some injuries, the likes of Bautista, Oliveira, Frucci we hope to see back next time out. But for other riders, it's about trying to have the time to go and regroup. Bulligan's been able to enjoy the fact that it's been one round after the other whenever he's been so dominant. We'll see if there's a little bit of a change of fortunes maybe afterwards.
34 consecutive podiums, 21 wins in 2026, and for the first time in a single season, 7 hat-tricks for Nicolo Bulliga.
Nicolo, it's pole position, 3 fastest laps, 3 race wins, a 7th hat-trick on the spin. Pretty much the perfect weekend in Misano.
Yeah, not so bad. I'm really happy, thanks to my team. It's incredible to win 3 races here in Misano in front of all these crowds. It's fantastic, and yeah, thank you to everyone.
Congratulations.
Grazie mille.
Yeah, all smiles for Nicolo Bulliga, and as Chris said there, he hasn't put a foot wrong this weekend, has he? Neither Chris nor Bulliga, in fact. But the Superpole going his way, you know, the fastest laps, the race victories, nothing more that Bulliga could have asked. He's led every lap this weekend.
Yeah, he's just been perfect, and to have a weekend like this where you lead every lap, you get a lap record, you just tick all the boxes. It's one of those situations where you just get to see how good of a rider he is, and Bulliga has shown himself to be that class apart from the rest of the riders this season, and he's well on the way towards winning that championship, obviously, and hard to argue with it.
Yeah, and Michael Ruben Rinaldi in the pits as well, watching on as his old team secure yet another 1-2 finish. I don't think there's any doubt that they're doing the best job in the pit lane at the moment as a team as well as a manufacturer, so it won't be any surprise when that title is settled.
Yeah, definitely. And for Ducati, they built an unbelievable bike, and for the Aruba team, they found a way to make the best use of that bike as well. And as the official Ducati team, they obviously have a lot of resources available to them, but they've just been so consistent, and you can see that not from Bulliga's performance, but the performance of the second rider, because Mac Owen has made such a big step forward this year compared to what we'd seen from him on the Honda over recent seasons, and that shows just the job that the team can do.
With another fastest lap of the race for Nicolo Bulliga this season, as he set it on lap number 5, at which point he had really broken the spirits of Ilkka Lekkinen. A bit of a memorabilia into the crowd at this Pirelli Emilia-Romagna round, the Pirelli Cup for one lucky spectator as the riders make their way onto the rostrum then. Let's run you through the numbers quickly. Jari Montella taking 3rd place, so that's 3 consecutive 3rd places and podiums this weekend. That's 8 rostrum finishes in all for him in WorldSBK, and as I said, big milestone for him as well, the 100th start. I know Barney were building up to it at the previous round, let alone this round, and they've got something to celebrate with it as well, with the 3 rostrum finishes this week.
Yeah, definitely, and they put a lot into getting Montella ready from when you look at him on the Super Sport bike and onto a Super bike, and certainly for Jari, he's just made a lot of progress over the course of the last 6 months, and it's very similar to whenever he moved the team from being a Kawasaki rider in Super Sport. He made a big step forward in his 2nd year, and we'll see the same again.
Yeah, you do often see how much it means to Marco Barnabo and the team when he gets these results, and they go through the other side of it as well when he's had those crashes and retirements.
Yeah, and it's also where you see the difference between for the team with Montella versus Bautista. Alvaro crashed out of the race, and they're definitely, it looks like on one side of the pit box there's that little bit of momentum that goes towards Montella.
Yeah, Bautista's unlucky today, but obviously he qualifies back down the order. Part of that is he's weak in qualifying, but the other part is he is carrying that injury. I don't think he'll be particularly excited necessarily about Donington, but after the summer break there are some venues there where Bautista should be able to end the season on a high. The problem for Bautista is, if he wants to continue, is he the forgotten man over the summer, and can he find a way to make sure that that final run-in at the end of this season isn't his last?
At the end of the day, he's the forgotten man within his team. He's been discarded by the factory Ducati team in the past, and I think for Alvaro that's where it becomes really difficult to be able to find where you can be on the grid next year, and he's been a great champion, but I think it's just tougher and tougher to see where he stays on the grid.
Aruba IT Ducati 1-2, 18 consecutive second places now for Iker Lecuona, 24 scoring finishes in a row, and now 20 career podiums. He is the rider with most rostrum finishes without a win. No such problem for Nicolo Bulliga. 77 podiums now to his name from 93 race starts, and 41 of them race victories. It's time to hear the Italian national anthem after Bulliga's latest.
Ladies and gentlemen, please show respect for the national anthem of both rider and wing manufacturer, the national anthem of Italy.
So, Nicolo Bulliga has done it yet again, and 7 unbeaten weekends this season. First rider to 7 hat-tricks in a single season, beating the previous record of Alvaro Bautista's just 3 years ago. Remember that Bautista had 6 hat-tricks and 27 wins out of 36, and this is great to see, Steve.
Yeah, this is what's really important to be able to see for Bulliga, and the reaction that he's able to get from the crowd. We saw yesterday how much it meant for him to be able to win home and get himself right down in and amongst it, and you can see how much joy it's bringing for Bulliga, but you can see the frustration for his teammate Iker Lecuona up there on the podium as well, and Lecuona really feeling a little bit like a spare part right now down there, and just the frustration for him from not being able to pick up a race win and be a little bit closer to Bulliga even, but this was a weekend that was all about Bulliga.
Yeah, but Lecuona certainly doing his job, maintaining the pressure on Nicolo Bulliga, and he'll just hope that he'll have better luck next time. 3 rostrum finishes this weekend: Bulliga, Lecuona, Montella.